Hello, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me tonight as we journey together through time, back more than 2,000 years to one of the most magnificent places that ever existed, the Great Library of Alexandria. You don't need to follow every detail of this story. In fact, you don't need to remember anything at all. You can simply let the words wash over you, like gentle waves on an ancient shore, allowing yourself to drift, to rest, to find peace. As you settle into your comfortable position, perhaps you notice how your body naturally begins to relax. The weight of your head sinking into the pillow, your shoulders releasing, letting go of any tension you've been carrying. Tonight, we're going to explore something extraordinary, not through exciting adventure, but through quiet contemplation, through the slow unfolding of history, through the peaceful consideration of what once was. And as we do, you might find your breathing naturally slowing, becoming deeper, more rhythmic, like the tide rolling in and out, carrying you gently toward rest, the Library of Alexandria. Just saying the name evokes something profound, a sense of ancient wisdom, of knowledge gathered and preserved, of scholars walking marble corridors lined with countless scrolls. But what was it really? How did it come to be? And what happened to it? These are questions we'll explore together, slowly, methodically, with no urgency, no pressure, just the gentle rhythm of discovery, like turning the pages of a very old book, one page at a time. You might notice as I speak how your eyelids are becoming heavier, how your thoughts are beginning to slow, how the concerns of the day are fading into the background, like distant echoes in those ancient halls. And that's perfectly natural, perfectly safe, because you're here now, in this moment, in this comfortable place, and all you need to do is listen or drift away, whichever feels right. We'll begin our journey in Alexandria itself, in the 3rd century before the Common Era, when the Mediterranean world was young and Egypt was ruled by Greek kings. And one of those kings had an extraordinary dream, a dream of gathering all the knowledge in the world under one roof. So let yourself relax even more deeply now. Let your body sink into complete comfort as we step back through time, back through the centuries, back to the shores of the Mediterranean, where our story begins. Imagine, if you will, the harbor of Alexandria in the year 280 BCE. The sun rises slowly over the eastern horizon, casting golden light across the waters of the Mediterranean. The harbor is already alive with activity, though the pace is unhurried, timeless. Ships from every corner of the known world rock gently in the harbor. Phoenician vessels with their distinctive curved prows, Egyptian grain ships sitting low in the water, Greek triremes with their rows of oars, Roman merchant ships, vessels from distant Persia and India. The city itself stretches along the coast, gleaming white in the morning sun, limestone buildings, marble columns, wide streets laid out in an orderly grid. Unlike the winding alleys of older cities, this is Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great himself just 40 years earlier, already becoming the jewel of the Mediterranean, the crossroads of the ancient world. And as you imagine this scene, you might notice how your breathing continues to slow, how your body becomes heavier, more relaxed, sinking deeper into comfort, like settling into warm sand on a peaceful beach. The city was planned, carefully designed, by an architect named Dinocrates. Streets running north to south, east to west, intersecting at right angles, creating a sense of order, of rationality, of Greek logic, imposed upon Egyptian earth. Along these streets, people from 100 different lands, speaking Greek, Egyptian, Aramaic, Hebrew, Latin, Persian. A symphony of languages, a meeting place of cultures, ideas flowing like water through channels, mixing, combining, creating something new. At the heart of the city, on a promontory overlooking the harbor, stood the royal palace complex where the Ptolemaic kings ruled. Descendants of one of Alexander's generals, they called themselves pharaohs, these Greek kings, adopting Egyptian customs while maintaining their Hellenistic heritage. And it was here, in this palace complex, that Ptolemy the Soter, Ptolemy the Savior, had his vision. His dream of creating something unprecedented, something that would make Alexandria the intellectual capital of the world. A library. But not just any library. A universal library. A universal library, containing all the books, all the scrolls, all the knowledge that existed anywhere in the world. Can you imagine it? That ambition, that dream of gathering everything known into one place. And as you consider this, you might feel yourself drifting, thoughts becoming softer, more distant, like memories of memories, fading gently into the background. Ptolemy consulted with his advisor, a man named Demetrius of Phalerum, a former governor of Athens, a scholar himself, a man who understood the power of learning, the importance of preserving knowledge. Together, they began to plan. How large should such a library be? What should it contain? How should it be organized? They looked to Athens, to the Lyceum of Aristotle, where scholars gathered to learn and teach. They looked to the collection that Aristotle himself had assembled, one of the finest private libraries in the Greek world. But they wanted more, much more. They wanted every book, every scroll, every manuscript. They wanted the complete works of Homer, of Hesiod, of the Greek playwrights, the histories of Herodotus and Thucydides, the philosophical treatises of Plato and Aristotle, the mathematical works of Euclid, but also the sacred texts of the Egyptians, written in hieroglyphs on papyrus scrolls thousands of years old, the astronomical observations of Babylonian priests, the medical knowledge of Persian physicians, the poetry of distant India, everything. And so, construction began, stone by stone. A building rose near the royal palace, perhaps attached to it, perhaps separate. The ancient sources disagree, and their disagreement is itself soothing, reminding us that not everything need be certain, that some mysteries can remain unsolved, and that's perfectly acceptable. The building was called the Mouseion, the Temple of the Muses, the 9 goddesses who inspired learning and the arts. Though we call it a library, it was more than that. It was a research institute, a university, a place where scholars could live and work, supported by the royal treasury, free to pursue knowledge for its own sake. And as you picture this building, this temple of learning, you might notice how peaceful you feel, how your mind is quiet, how your body has found complete rest, like an ancient scholar settling into a chair in a sunlit reading room, surrounded by wisdom, wrapped in tranquility. The Mouseion had lecture halls, meeting rooms, observatories for studying the stars, dissection rooms for medical research, botanical gardens, a zoo, everything a scholar might need. And at the center of it all, the library itself, room after room, shelf after shelf, tens of thousands of scrolls, and growing every day, scribes worked constantly, copying texts. Agents traveled to Athens, to Rhodes, to Pergamon, purchasing or borrowing scrolls to be copied. Ships arriving in the harbor were searched. Any scrolls found were taken to the library, copied. The copies returned to the owners, while the originals remained in Alexandria. Some called this piracy, but Ptolemy called it preservation. And slowly, scroll by scroll, season by season, year by year, the collection grew. The library was becoming what Ptolemy had dreamed, a repository of all human knowledge, a place where a scholar could find anything ever written, could trace any question back to its source. And as the library grew, so did Alexandria's reputation. Scholars began to arrive from across the ancient world, drawn by the promise of accessing this unprecedented collection, of studying with the finest minds of the age, of contributing to something larger than themselves. And you, resting here now, might feel a similar sense of being part of something timeless, something peaceful, as your breathing continues to slow, as you sink deeper into comfort, deeper into rest. In the reading rooms of the Great Library, in the courtyards where scholars debated, under the colonnade where they walked and talked, some of the greatest minds of antiquity gathered. Their names echo through history: Euclid, Archimedes, Eratosthenes, Hipparchus, Galen, each pursuing their own questions, their own research, yet all connected by this place, by access to this accumulated wisdom. And as we consider their work, we can do so slowly, methodically, with no urgency, allowing each discovery to unfold at its own pace. Like petals opening in the morning sun, Euclid arrived in Alexandria during the reign of Ptolemy I, and here he wrote his Elements, a work of mathematical geometry that would be used as a textbook for more than 2,000 years. In fact, it's still studied today. Picture him, if you will, in a quiet corner of the library, surrounded by scrolls, perhaps earlier works on geometry by Pythagoras and his followers, by the mathematicians of Babylonia and Egypt. Euclid studied these, synthesized them, created something new, a systematic treatment of geometry, building from simple axioms to complex proofs, step by logical step. He wrote on papyrus using a reed pen and ink, forming Greek letters with practiced ease. The work was meticulous, precise, each theorem carefully stated, each proof rigorously constructed. And when he finished, the scrolls were copied by the library's scribes, added to the collection, available for other scholars to study and build upon. And you, as you hear about this patient work, this careful thinking, might feel your own thoughts becoming more organized, more peaceful, everything falling into place, tensions releasing, breath slowing, body settling. Archimedes of Syracuse visited the library as a young man, studying with the successors of Euclid, learning everything the library could teach him about mathematics and physics. He would later return to Syracuse, but his time in Alexandria shaped his thinking, gave him access to knowledge he couldn't have found anywhere else. Here he may have first encountered the works on mechanics, on levers and pulleys, on the properties of water, ideas that would later lead to his famous discoveries: the principle of buoyancy, the law of the lever, his work on circles and spheres and cylinders, all of it building on the foundation he discovered in Alexandria's scrolls. Eratosthenes became head librarian in the 3rd century BCE, a geographer, a mathematician, a poet. They called him Beta, the second letter of the Greek alphabet, because he was excellent at everything, but the absolute best at nothing. Yet what he accomplished would seem impossible to us. Using only the information available in the library and a few simple observations, he calculated the circumference of the Earth. Let me tell you how, slowly, step by step, and as I do, you might notice how your mind follows along, or doesn't, how thoughts come and go, how you're free to listen or drift away, whichever feels right. Eratosthenes noticed something. Vertical objects cast shadows. He knew the distance between the two cities, about 5,000 stadia. He measured the angle of shadow in Alexandria, about 7 degrees, 1/50th of a circle. If the Earth was curved, he reasoned, then the circumference must be 50 times the distance between the cities, about 250,000 stadia, converted to modern measurements. That's remarkably close to the actual circumference of Earth. An achievement made possible by the library, by access to astronomical observations, to geographical records, to mathematical techniques developed over centuries. And there's something soothing about this, about the systematic pursuit of knowledge, the patient accumulation of observations, the logical reasoning, like pieces of a puzzle coming together. Slowly, peacefully, everything finding its place. Hipparchus, the astronomer, came to Alexandria in the 2nd century BCE. He studied the earlier observations recorded by Babylonian astronomers, carefully preserved in the library. Observations of the stars spanning hundreds of years, measurements of the moon's motion, records of eclipses. He compared these ancient records with his own observations and discovered something remarkable. The position of the stars had shifted. He cataloged over 850 stars, recording their positions with unprecedented accuracy. He developed trigonometry, creating the first table of chord values, tools that would be essential for astronomy and navigation for centuries to come. All of this work done in the library. Surrounded by scrolls, working by the light that streamed through high windows, or by the glow of oil lamps after dark, patient, methodical, building knowledge, one observation at a time. And you, resting here, might feel a similar sense of patience, of things unfolding at their natural pace. No rushing, no pressure, just the gentle flow of time, like the Nile flowing toward the sea. The library wasn't only for Greek scholars. Egyptian priests brought their ancient texts, written in hieroglyphics, scrolls describing religious rituals that had been performed for thousands of years, medical papyri explaining treatments for various ailments, astronomical texts recording the movements of stars and planets observed from temple rooftops. A priest named Manetho wrote a history of Egypt in Greek, dividing the pharaohs into 30 dynasties, a system we still use today. He had access to records that are now lost, temple archives going back millennia, preserved in the library's collection. Jewish scholars came from Jerusalem, bringing the Hebrew scriptures. Here they translated them into Greek, creating what's known as the Septuagint, making the wisdom of the Hebrew people accessible to the wider Greek-speaking world, a bridge between cultures, between traditions. Scholars from Persia, from Mesopotamia, from distant India all came, all brought their knowledge, all contributed to the library's growing collection. Alexandria became a meeting place where ideas from different civilizations could mix and combine, where a scholar from Athens could read the astronomy of Babylon, where an Egyptian priest could learn Greek philosophy. And this mixing, this cross-pollination of ideas, led to new insights, new discoveries, advances in medicine, in astronomy, in mathematics, in geography, the ancient world's greatest intellectual achievements. Many of them made possible by this library, by the ability to compare sources, to build on previous work, to stand on the shoulders of giants. As you consider all of this, you might feel your own mind opening, expanding, even as your body grows heavier, more relaxed. It's a pleasant paradox, the mind free to wander through ancient halls of learning, while the body rests completely, deeply, peacefully. The scholars lived in the Mausoleum, in rooms provided by the royal treasury. They ate together in common dining halls, discussing their work, debating questions, challenging each other's ideas. It must have been extraordinary to be surrounded by brilliant minds, to have access to all that accumulated wisdom, to devote your life to understanding the world. Some of them, inevitably, must have felt overwhelmed, standing in the library, looking at the hundreds of thousands of scrolls, knowing they could study for a lifetime and still only scratch the surface. So much knowledge, so much to learn. But perhaps they also felt peace, knowing that the knowledge was preserved, that even if they couldn't read everything, it was here, safe, protected, available for future generations. And you might feel a similar peace now, knowing that you don't need to remember all of this, don't need to hold on to these details. You can simply let them wash over you like waves on the shore, present for a moment, then receding, leaving only peace behind. The library grew and grew. Some ancient sources claim it held 400,000 scrolls. Others say 700,000. We don't know the exact number, and it doesn't really matter. What matters is what it represented. The dream of gathering all human knowledge, of preserving it, of making it accessible, of using it to understand the world better. And as we move forward in our story, you can let yourself sink even deeper into relaxation, your breathing slow and regular, your body completely at ease, knowing that this is a safe place, a peaceful place, where you can simply rest. Let us imagine a day in the life of the library. Not an exciting day, not a day of dramatic events, but an ordinary day, quiet, peaceful, the kind of day where real work gets done. The sun rises, as it always does, over the harbor of Alexandria. Light gradually fills the sky, soft, gentle, the darkness fading slowly, naturally. In the Mausoleum, scholars begin to wake. Some have been up before dawn, unable to sleep, their minds full of questions, of problems they're trying to solve. Others sleep longer, rising with the sun, or even after. There's no urgency, no deadline. The royal patronage means they're free to work at their own pace, to follow their interests wherever they lead, a luxury that few scholars in history have ever enjoyed. They gather for breakfast, simple food, bread, cheese, olives, dates, figs, wine mixed with water. The conversation is quiet, sleepy. Gradually, they wake up, begin to discuss their work. One scholar mentions a problem in Euclid's Elements. He's found what might be a gap in one of the proofs. Others chime in, suggesting solutions, debating the logic. This could go on for hours, might go on for days. There's no rush. The truth will emerge eventually, through patient discussion, through careful reasoning. And you, listening to this, might feel yourself drifting, the sound of ancient scholars debating mathematics, fading into pleasant background noise, like rain on a roof, soothing, peaceful. After breakfast, they make their way to the library proper. The morning is the best time for reading, when the light is bright and clear, streaming through high windows, illuminating the reading tables. Imagine walking with them through corridors lined with shelves, scroll after scroll after scroll, some in boxes, some in cubby holes, some still tied with cord, each one a window into someone's thoughts, someone's discoveries, someone's understanding of the world. The scrolls are organized, though we're not entirely sure how, perhaps by subject, all the mathematical texts together, all the medical texts, all the poetry, perhaps by author, all of Homer's works in one place, all of Plato's dialogues in another, perhaps by language, Greek texts separate from Egyptian, from Hebrew, from others. There are librarians to help find things, assistants who know the collection, who can guide a scholar to the exact scroll they need. Ah, yes. You're looking for Aristarchus's work on the distance to the sun. Let me show you. And the scholar follows through the stacks, the librarian's footsteps echoing softly on stone floors, until they arrive at the right section, the right shelf. Here, this is it. The librarian carefully removes the scroll, hands it to the scholar with respect, with care. This is precious, irreplaceable. Handle it gently. The scholar carries it to a reading table, unties the cord, carefully unrolls the papyrus. The writing is clear, the work of a professional scribe, Greek letters marching in neat columns across the scroll. He begins to read, slowly, carefully, sometimes going back, rereading a passage, trying to understand, sometimes making notes on a wax tablet, recording thoughts, questions, ideas for further research. Around him, other scholars are doing the same. The reading room is quiet, just the gentle sounds of scrolls being unrolled, of reed pens scratching on papyrus, of the occasional quiet conversation between scholars, of someone walking to fetch another scroll. Present and future, all meeting in this quiet room. And you can feel that same timelessness, that same sense of being outside the rush of daily life. You're breathing slow, your body still, at peace. Hours pass, the sun moves across the sky, the angle of light changes, but the work continues, unrushed, methodical. A scholar might spend an entire day reading a single text, thinking about it, making notes, preparing to discuss it with colleagues. At midday, they break for lunch. Again, simple food, more conversation. Someone is excited about a text he's found, a Persian work on mathematics that he'd never seen before. He's been struggling with a problem, and this text, it might have the answer he needs. Others share their progress or their frustrations. A medical scholar is trying to reconcile contradictory accounts of how the heart functions. One Egyptian text says one thing, a Greek text says another. Which is correct? Or are they both describing the same thing in different ways? The conversations meander, drift from topic to topic. This is how ideas develop. Through informal discussion, through the free exchange of thoughts, someone suggests an experiment, a way to test competing theories, others offer refinements, improvements, and then back to work. More thinking, more note taking, the light grows softer, more golden, shadows lengthen. Some scholars take breaks, walk in the gardens of the Masayan, breathing fresh air, resting their eyes, thinking about what they've read. Sometimes the best insights come when you're not actively working, when your mind is free to wander, to make unexpected connections, and you might take a similar break now, might let your mind wander, or might let it grow quiet, still resting, like a garden in the evening, peaceful, serene. As evening approaches, the work slows, oil lamps are lit for those who want to continue reading. Though many scholars prefer to stop now, to give their eyes rest, to think about what they've learned, to prepare for tomorrow, they gather for dinner. The main meal of the day, more substantial than breakfast or lunch, conversation flows more freely now. The wine less diluted, jokes, stories, gossip about royal court politics, but also, still, always, discussion of ideas, of discoveries, of questions that need answering. A geographer talks about his project. He's trying to create a map of the known world, using reports from travelers, from merchants, from military campaigns. He describes the difficulties, the contradictions in different accounts. A place that one traveler puts to the east, another puts to the west, how to reconcile these differences. An astronomer discusses the motions of the planets, those wandering stars that don't follow the same paths as the fixed stars. Why do they sometimes move backward? Is there a pattern? Can it be predicted? A poet? There are poets here too, not just scientists and scholars, recites from a new work, an epic about the founding of Alexandria, or a hymn to the muses. The others listen, appreciate, offer gentle criticism, suggestions for improvement. The evening grows later. Some drift away to their rooms. Others continue talking, late into the night. The library itself is closed now, locked. The scrolls safe in the darkness, waiting for tomorrow, when scholars will return, will continue the never-ending work of understanding, of learning, of preserving knowledge. And this rhythm, this daily cycle of work and rest, of reading and thinking, of discussion and contemplation, continues day after day, year after year, a peaceful routine, predictable, secure, like your own breathing now, regular, unchanging, reliable. The pursuit of knowledge, their purpose, some spend their entire lives here, arriving as young men, staying until they're old, devoting themselves to understanding, to discovery, And when they die, their own works are added to the library's collection, their life's work preserved, available for future generations to study, to build upon. There's something beautiful about this, about the continuity, about how knowledge builds on knowledge, how each generation learns from the previous one and teaches the next. An endless chain, stretching back to the distant past, forward to the unknown future. And you are part of that chain in your own way, learning, growing, understanding. Even now, as you rest, as your body grows heavier, as your mind grows quiet, you're connected to this ancient tradition. This human desire to know, to understand, to preserve what we've learned. The library offered something else too, something hard to quantify, a sense of being part of something important, something larger than yourself. When a scholar walked through those halls, surrounded by centuries of accumulated wisdom, he knew he was standing on the shoulders of giants, that his own work, however small, would contribute to human understanding. And perhaps as you drift deeper now into rest, into peace, you can feel that same sense of being part of something larger, something timeless, something that continues, even as individuals come and go, even as empires rise and fall. The work continues, the pursuit of knowledge continues, and you can rest, knowing that the work will be there tomorrow, knowing that you don't need to hold on to any of this, that you can simply let go. Let go of the day's concerns, let go of tension, let go of the need to remember, to understand, to do anything at all. Just rest now, deeply, peacefully, like those ancient scrolls resting on their shelves in the darkness of the library, quiet, still, waiting for tomorrow. And now we come to the most difficult part of our story, the part filled with uncertainty, with competing theories, with questions that may never be answered. What happened to the Library of Alexandria? The answer, like so many things in history, is not simple, not clear, not satisfying in the way we might want it to be. But perhaps there's something peaceful about accepting uncertainty, about being comfortable with not knowing. The truth is, the library did not disappear in a single dramatic moment. There was no one fire, no single catastrophe that destroyed it all at once. Instead, it faded, gradually, over centuries, like a sunset, slowly dimming, until the light was gone. Let me tell you the story, or rather, stories, plural, because there are several. And as I do, you might feel your mind growing quieter, thoughts becoming softer, as you sink deeper into the comfort of your bed. The first event we know about occurs in 48 BCE. Nearly 2.5 centuries after the library's founding, Julius Caesar was in Alexandria, involved in a civil war, taking sides in a dynastic dispute between Ptolemy XIII and his sister Cleopatra. Yes, that Cleopatra, Caesar's forces were outnumbered. Surrounded in the palace district, he ordered his men to set fire to the Egyptian fleet in the harbor, to prevent it from being used against him. The fire spread, as fires do. It may have reached the waterfront warehouses, where scrolls were stored, waiting to be cataloged, to be added to the library's collection. Some ancient sources say 40,000 scrolls were destroyed, but the main library, in the Malchion, seems to have survived. The institution continued. Scholars continued to work there. The collection remained, damaged perhaps, but not destroyed. And you, listening to this, might notice how even difficult history can have a calming effect when told slowly, methodically, the rhythm of the narration, like waves on a shore, steady, predictable, peaceful. Years passed, decades. Rome gradually absorbed Egypt into its empire. Alexandria remained important, the library continued, but perhaps the Golden Age was over. The Ptolemies had supported scholarship generously. The Romans were more practical, more interested in useful knowledge than pure research. The library received less funding, fewer new scrolls were acquired, some scholars went elsewhere. To Rome, to Athens, to other cities where opportunities were better. The intellectual center of the world was shifting, slowly, imperceptibly, but unmistakably. In the 3rd century CE, during the reign of the Roman Emperor Aurelian, there was warfare in Alexandria. The emperor was fighting against a rebellion. Part of the royal palace district was destroyed. This may have included the Mausoleum, the main library building, but again, the sources are unclear. Some say the library was destroyed, others don't mention it at all. Perhaps it had already declined by then. Perhaps there was less to destroy. Perhaps it had moved to a different location. The daughter library, in the Serapeum, a temple dedicated to the god Serapis, seems to have continued. A smaller collection, but still significant. Still a place where scholars could study, where knowledge was preserved. Time passes. The Roman Empire becomes Christian. Pagan temples are closed, destroyed, converted to churches. In 391 CE, the Serapeum is destroyed by a Christian mob led by the patriarch Theophilus. Was the library destroyed then? Some sources say yes, that the scrolls were burned, that centuries of accumulated knowledge went up in smoke. Other sources don't mention a library at all. Perhaps it had already been emptied, its scrolls dispersed, moved to safety, or simply, gradually, stolen, lost, deteriorated over time. And as you consider these various possibilities, these competing narratives, you might feel a sense of acceptance, of peace. It's okay not to know, okay to live with mystery, to let some questions remain unanswered. There's one more theory, one more possible event. In 642 CE, during the Arab conquest of Egypt, the Caliph Omar is supposed to have ordered the destruction of the library, saying that if the books agreed with the Quran, they were unnecessary, and if they disagreed, they were heretical. Either way, they should be burned. But this story first appears in writings 600 years after the event. No contemporary sources mention it. Most historians now believe it's a legend, a story invented much later to explain something that had already happened, or perhaps to demonize the conquerors. The truth, the real truth, is probably this. The library declined gradually, over centuries. A combination of factors: reduced funding, political instability, religious conflict, natural decay, theft, fire, water damage, the gradual erosion of time. Papyrus scrolls don't last forever. In Egypt's dry climate, they can survive for centuries, but eventually, they deteriorate, become brittle, fall apart. They need to be copied, again and again, to be preserved. And perhaps, as the library declined, as there were fewer scholars, fewer scribes, the copying stopped, and slowly, scroll by scroll, the collection disappeared. Not in flames, not in a single moment, but like sand through fingers, gradually, inevitably, until it was gone. And perhaps there's something almost peaceful about that, about the natural cycle of things. Everything that is built eventually crumbles. Everything that is gathered eventually disperses. It's the nature of existence, the fundamental rhythm of the universe, birth and death, creation and destruction, gathering and scattering. As you rest here now, you might feel that same rhythm, your breath flowing in and out, your heartbeat steady and slow, the natural cycles of your body, working without effort, without thought, just being. Some of the library's contents, we know, did survive. Not everything was lost. Some scrolls were copied before the library declined. Those copies exist today. In libraries and museums around the world, we still have Euclid's Elements. We still have works by Archimedes, by Galen, by many others who worked in Alexandria. Other works survived in translation. Arabic scholars, centuries later, translated Greek texts into Arabic, preserving them. Those Arabic texts were later translated into Latin, and thus preserved. A chain of preservation, spanning cultures, spanning languages, spanning centuries, but much was lost. So much was lost, works we know existed, that ancient sources mention, but that we'll never read. The complete works of Aeschylus, of Sophocles, hundreds of plays, lost, the histories of numerous ancient historians, the scientific treatises, the poetry, the philosophy, gone. We can only imagine what knowledge was lost, what discoveries, what insights, perhaps solutions to problems we're still working on, perhaps beautiful poetry, perhaps new ways of thinking about the world. It's a kind of tragedy, and yet, perhaps it's also liberating. We do the best we can with what we have. We preserve what we can. We build on the knowledge that survived. And we accept that some things are lost forever. Just as you drift deeper now, you can accept that you don't need to hold on to these thoughts, don't need to remember these details. You can let them go. Let them fade. Like ancient scrolls crumbling to dust, returning to the earth, returning to silence. The physical library is gone, has been gone for more than 1,000 years. But the idea of the library, the dream of gathering all knowledge, of preserving it, of making it accessible, that idea survives. Every library, every archive, every museum carries forward something of Alexandria's vision. The public library in your town, the university library, the internet itself, with its vast accumulation of information, all of them, in some way, descendants of that ancient dream. And in that sense, the Library of Alexandria never truly died. It transformed, evolved, spread, became not one place, but many places, not one collection, but countless collections. The dream lives on, as you live on, as you live on, breathing slowly, resting deeply. Part of the same human story. The scholars who worked there, their names mostly forgotten, their individual contributions lost, but collectively, they advanced human understanding. They preserved knowledge. They passed the torch to the next generation, and that generation to the next, and so on, down through the centuries, to us. And now you can rest, knowing that the pursuit of knowledge continues, that the work goes on, even as you sleep, even as you let go of consciousness, let go of thought, let go of everything except this peaceful moment. Let us consider now what the Library of Alexandria truly meant, not the building, not the scrolls, but the idea, the vision, the dream. It represented something fundamental about human nature, this desire to gather knowledge, to preserve it, to share it. We are a species that teaches, that learns, that builds on what came before. And as you think about this, you might notice how your body has become completely relaxed, how your mind has grown so quiet, how peaceful you feel, like resting in a safe place, surrounded by wisdom, by the accumulated understanding of generations. The library was built on several radical ideas. Ideas that seem obvious to us now, but were revolutionary then. First, that knowledge has value in itself. Not just practical knowledge, not just information that helps you build better tools or grow better crops, but pure knowledge, understanding for its own sake, mathematics that has no immediate application, astronomy that serves no practical purpose, philosophy that asks questions without easy answers. The Ptolemies funded this. They supported scholars who might spend their entire lives studying abstract problems, calculating the size of the earth, cataloging stars, debating the nature of virtue, not because it was useful, but because it was worthwhile, because human understanding is valuable. And you, resting here, might appreciate that same principle. That rest has value, that peace has value, not because it accomplishes something, but because it simply is valuable in itself. Second, that knowledge should be gathered, that a scholar shouldn't have to travel to Athens to read Plato, then to Pergamon to read someone else, then to Babylon to study astronomy. Instead, bring all the books to one place, make them accessible. Let scholars compare sources, cross-reference, build connections between different fields. This was unprecedented. Before Alexandria, knowledge was scattered, fragmented, held by individual teachers or in small collections. Alexandria centralized it, democratized it, at least for those who could travel there, who could gain access. The model it established, the research library, the university, places where scholars gather, where books are collected and preserved. This model still shapes how we organize knowledge today. Third, that knowledge should be preserved. The Ptolemies understood that papyrus decays, that scrolls can be lost, damaged, destroyed, so they employed scribes, professional copyists, to make duplicates, to ensure that if one copy was lost, others would survive. They were thinking about the future, about generations not yet born, about preserving the past for people centuries hence. It's a kind of generosity, a gift to the future. We know we won't live forever, but perhaps our knowledge can. Perhaps what we've learned can help those who come after. And as you sink deeper into rest now, you might feel connected to that same chain of time. Past, present, future, all connected, all part of the same continuous story. The library also represented something else, the meeting of different cultures, different traditions of knowledge, Greek and Egyptian, Babylonian and Persian, Hebrew and Indian, all coming together in one place, all contributing to a shared project of understanding. In most of human history, different cultures have been isolated, or when they've met, it's been through conquest, through war, through one culture dominating another. But in Alexandria, at its best, there was genuine exchange, genuine dialogue. Greek scholars learning from Egyptian priests, Egyptian scholars reading Greek philosophy, ideas mixing, combining, creating something new. It wasn't perfect, of course. The Greeks were the ruling class. Greek was the dominant language. There was cultural bias, assumptions of superiority. But still, the principle was there. The idea that wisdom could come from anywhere. That truth was not the property of any one people. And in our time, we're still working on that same project, still trying to bring together different perspectives, different ways of knowing, still recognizing that no culture has a monopoly on wisdom. As you rest, you might feel that same openness, that same willingness to accept, to receive, to let go of certainty, of fixed ideas, to simply be open, receptive, peaceful. Peaceful. The library also represents loss, the reminder that nothing lasts forever, that even the greatest achievements can disappear, that knowledge, once lost, may be lost forever. This could be depressing, but it doesn't have to be. It can be liberating. It reminds us to appreciate what we have, to preserve what we can, to not take anything for granted, and also to accept that some things will be lost, that this is natural, that it's okay. You don't need to hold on to everything. Some memories can fade, some experiences can pass, some things can be forgotten, and that's all right. It's part of the rhythm of life, holding and releasing, gathering and letting go. The Great Library is gone, but its influence remains. It shaped how we think about knowledge, about preservation. Every library that exists today, in some way, carries forward its vision. The idea that knowledge should be gathered, preserved, made accessible, and, more than that, it reminds us what's possible. When resources are dedicated to learning, when scholars are supported, when knowledge is valued, remarkable things can happen. The boundaries of human understanding can be pushed, new discoveries can be made, the darkness of ignorance can be pushed back, just a little, just enough. The scholars of Alexandria looked up at the stars and calculated their distance. They looked at the curve of the earth and measured its size. They studied the human body and began to understand how it works. They read ancient texts and preserved them for the future. They were human, like us, no smarter, no more capable, but they had access to accumulated knowledge, access to each other's thinking, access to time, to think, to study, to explore. And with that access, they achieved extraordinary things. We have even greater access now. More knowledge than they could have dreamed of, accessible in seconds. We stand on their shoulders, on the shoulders of everyone who came after them, everyone who preserved knowledge, who added to it, who passed it on. And as you rest now, completely relaxed, breathing slowly, you're part of that same story, that human story of learning, of growing, of understanding. And you can rest, knowing the story continues. Even as you sleep, even as you dream, even as you let go now, completely. Nothing to hold on to, nothing to remember. Just rest, deep rest, peaceful rest, like those ancient scrolls resting in the darkness, quiet, still, safe. And so we come to the end of our journey, back through time, back to Alexandria, back to that great library, that vision of gathering all knowledge under one roof. We've walked through its halls in imagination, met its scholars, seen the daily rhythm of work and study, contemplated its gradual decline, its loss, and considered what it all means for them, and for us. And as we do, you might notice how deeply relaxed you've become, how your body has settled into complete comfort, how your breathing has slowed to its most natural rhythm, how your mind has grown quiet and still. The story of the Library of Alexandria is, in many ways, the story of human aspiration. We dream of understanding everything, of preserving all knowledge, of passing wisdom on to future generations. We reach for something beyond our grasp, knowing we'll never fully achieve it, but finding meaning in the reaching. The library itself is gone, has been gone for well over 1,000 years. But the dream remains, the vision of a place where all knowledge is gathered, where any question can be answered, where scholars from every nation can come and learn. In a way, we're still building that library. Each generation adds to it, preserves what came before, pushes a little further into the unknown. The specific building in Alexandria is lost, but the project continues, will always continue. As long as there are humans who wonder, who ask questions, who seek to understand, and you, as you drift now toward sleep, you're part of that same human family. That family of learners, of questioners, of people who look at the world and wonder why, how, what if. Even in rest, even in sleep, your mind continues its work, processing what you've learned, making connections, consolidating memories. The same work that those ancient scholars did in their own way, in their own time. There's something deeply peaceful about this, about being part of something larger than yourself, something that extends backward and forward through time. You are a link in a chain, connected to everyone who came before, everyone who will come after. And for now, your only task is to rest, to let go, to allow sleep to come naturally, easily, without effort. The Great Library had its time, flourished for centuries, then faded. That's the nature of all things: birth, growth, decline, death. The cycle that governs everything, from the smallest insect to the largest empire. Everything has its season, and this too is comforting. In its way, nothing lasts forever, but nothing is truly lost either. Everything transforms, continues in new forms. The library is gone, but its influence remains. The scrolls are dust, but the ideas survive. You too are part of this cycle, waking and sleeping, activity and rest. The daily rhythm that sustains life. And right now, it's time for rest, time for sleep, time to let go of consciousness and allow your body. It's time of healing, of renewal. Imagine, if you will, one last time, the library at night. After the scholars have gone to their beds, after the oil lamps have been extinguished, the reading rooms are dark, quiet, still. The scrolls rest on their shelves, in perfect silence, in perfect peace, waiting for tomorrow, but in no hurry, simply being, existing in the darkness, safe, protected, at rest. And you are like those scrolls now, at rest in darkness, in silence, nothing to do, nowhere to be, no need to think or remember or understand. Just rest. Your breathing continues, slow and steady, in and out, in and out, like waves on the shore of the Mediterranean, like the rhythms that have continued for thousands of years, will continue for thousands more, eternal, unchanging, peaceful. The story of the library reminds us that knowledge is fragile, that it must be preserved, protected, passed on. But it also reminds us that the human desire to know, to understand, to learn, this is not fragile. This endures, this continues, through wars and plagues and the fall of empires, always, the desire to understand persists. And so does the desire to rest, to find peace, to let go. This too is part of human nature. Between striving and surrendering, between holding on and letting go, tonight you've let go. You've allowed yourself this time, this space, this peace. And in doing so, you've honored a need that's as old as humanity itself, the need for rest, for restoration, for sleep. The scholars of Alexandria, after their long days of study, would return to their rooms, would lie down on their beds, would close their eyes and sleep, just as you're sleeping now, or about to sleep, deeply, peacefully, completely. 2,000 years separate you from them. And yet, in this, you're the same need, the same natural rhythm, the same surrender to sleep. And in your sleep, who knows what connections your mind will make, what dreams will come, what understanding will deepen. Sleep is its own kind of knowledge, its own kind of wisdom, the wisdom of letting go, of trusting, of allowing. The library taught us to gather, to preserve, to study, but sleep teaches us to release, to forget, to simply be. Both are necessary. Both are necessary. Both are valuable. Both are part of what it means to be human. So rest now, completely, fully, with no reservation. Let your body grow heavy. Let your mind grow quiet. Let sleep come in its own time, in its own way, naturally, effortlessly. There's nothing you need to remember from the story, nothing you need to hold on to. If you remember something tomorrow, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. The purpose wasn't to learn facts, but to provide a gentle journey, a peaceful path towards sleep. And you've traveled that path. You've walked through ancient halls. You've sat in reading rooms. You've watched the sun rise and set over Alexandria. And now you can rest, knowing the journey is complete. The Great Library sleeps, has slept for centuries, in dust, in memory, in the echoes of history. And you sleep too, in comfort, in safety, in peace. Sleeping in peace. Sleeping, deeply sleeping, peacefully sleeping, all night long. Your body healing, your mind resting, everything releasing, everything settling its natural state of peace. Sleep now. Deep sleep, peaceful sleep, restorative sleep, all through the night, until morning comes, gentle and soft, and you wake refreshed, renewed, restored. But for now, only sleep, only rest, only peace, deep, peaceful sleep.